What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly. And as always, I'm joined by a guest. And today I'm joined by the fantastic Ria Carrigan. And we are back. Oh, the last time you came on was to talk this. And so you are back to talk Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, or was the last time The Thing, actually?
Oh, it could have been, yes.
Where I obviously watched The Thing for the millionth time and enjoyed it. And then The Thing from Another Planet.
The Thing from Another World.
Yeah. Another World, I put on and went, oh, this is boring. I spent most of the time listening about on my phone. And then you went, right, let's talk about the film. I had to confess, it's like, I watched it technically.
Yeah. It was on and I was in the room.
And I remember the beginning and the end. The details from the middle were blurry.
Generally fuzzy, yeah. That's fair. I'd say that's kind of fair for that film. But we are going to talk about something much better.
Yes.
Much more engrossing. We are back because we did a Mike Flanagan run. All his films and his TV shows. And we thought we were getting this last year. And we didn't. We got The Midnight Club, which I ain't gonna lie, I've not watched.
I've not watched either.
Because I was like, that doesn't look like something that's not for me. That's a teenager thing. But now we have had The Fall of the House of Usher, and which obviously named for the Edgar Allan Poe story, but not. Although it is that is the main gist of the story. It bleeds into a whole host of other Edgar Allan Poe stories, poems, and other stuff. And yeah, it was incredible. Quick synopsis. This is a very quick synopsis. I'm going to read this from IMDb because we'll get into all the details and stuff later on. But to secure their future and fortune, two ruthless siblings build a family dynasty that begins to crumble when their heirs mysteriously die one by one. This is the Usher family, headed by Roderick Usher and his sister Madeline Usher. So let's start with just a general overview. Ria, what were your initial or overall thoughts then for The Fall of the House of Usher?
Oh, try and keep it short because there's lots of thoughts. But as big Mike Flanagan fan, talking to you about it last year was just, or maybe the year before, I can't remember now. It feels like it's forever ago. It's still one of the best discussions I've ever had. I loved it. I love revisiting all of his work. I think Hill House is his masterpiece. I mean, we all know, well, hopefully you listen to the other ones, but I absolutely loved Midnight Mass, and I could still talk about Midnight Mass for 20 more hours, but Hill House to me is just his absolute masterpiece. And then this comes along, and it has not toppled Hill House for me, but wow, for me, what works so well about Mike Flanagan is when it's something like this. Now, we all know Edgar Allan Poe, but probably lots of people don't know most of his short stories and poems and stuff like that. Everybody knows Raven and things like that. But what he's done here and what he's done with his other work, mostly with Hill House, is taken that work that people know and modernized it in such an accessible way that, there are going to be people buying Edgar Allan Poe stories.
Oh, yeah.
Or on Amazon and their Kindles, checking out at the library, posting about it on Reddit, and stuff like that. And I just think translating that into these 8 different, is 8, isn't it? Or is it 7 episodes?
Yeah, 8 episodes.
8, yeah. Doubted myself then. Those 8 different episodes, all based around a different story or poem and things like that, and bringing that to modern consciousness, making it scary, funny. Like, this is the funniest out of all of his work.
Yeah, the dark humor in this is
I just think that like these are the sort of filmmakers we need, not just for horror. I'm always banging on about horror filmmakers, but like this has just come to me. This is like Clueless, right?
Yeah.
Amy Heckling did Clueless, and everybody was suddenly like, "Oh my god, this is about Jane. This is Jane Austen, but modernized."
Yeah.
Like that's what House of Usher is. It's also Succession, which is amazing because I love Succession. So it's like make Succession horror. Succession is already a horror. Everyone, it is horrific.
But this is make it gory. Let's throw in a bunch of blood and go at it. Yeah, no, I agree. I think I was excited for this. I've been very excited because of how much I enjoy his work. And Midnight Mass being really the last one I watched, I thoroughly enjoyed. And Bly Manor is fine. It's it's sort of this comes over and sort of like kicks the shit out of Bly Manor, sleeps with Midnight Mass, and then starts canoodling up to sort of Hill House. And you're just like, Jesus, like, it just comes in and takes over. Like this has such a force to it, this show. And it's so confident, I think, in everything it does. I think you couldn't pull this off. I don't think this couldn't be like your first show. This is the work of a confident creator. And like you say, to go and so I've got, I'm holding it here. This is my complete works of Edgar Allan Poe I've got here. And like, it's not a small book. Let me tell you, like this is a tome. This is running to tightly packed wording, right? And it's hardback size, and it runs to about 800 pages. It's not small.
If like reading for you before bed.
That's it. I had I wore the smoking jacket and by candlelight in front of a fireplace. Only way to read Poe. Unfortunately, everybody else in the pub was a little perturbed, but yes, but it's what he's done here is so well done, and I was curious to sort of see because this has obviously been out about a week now. We're sort of recording this just under a week probably. I wanted to go check out the reviews. I'm always curious, right? Watched it, go see what others think, and all the reviews were good. I mean, this has got an 8.1 on IMDb. I think it's like a 4.2 on Letterboxd. So it's getting really, positive feedback. But what's interesting is there are still people in that 1 star going, "This isn't the Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher," and you're like, "You're right, it's not like that." Nobody really wants to see that, because it's 200, it's 200 years old. And we need to be updated, but there's definitely like purists out there that are still very much against, as you said, this sort of like this modernization of these tales. And I can sort of get that to an extent, but like when it's this good, I'm sort of like, no, I'll forgive that. That's fine. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a fantastically well done piece. But the other thing as well, like not just sort of go, "Oh, we're going to do House of Usher." I'm going to do House of Usher, and then within it, I'm going to weave in, and also can I say how well it weaved in. But I'm going to weave in Mask of the Red Death, Black Cat, all the ones it names for, Telltale Heart, blah blah. And then in the meantime, I'm also going to weave in several poems that you don't realize I'm weaving in, and a couple of extra stories you don't realize I'm weaving in until the end. I was like rushing to, and I'm not saying I'm not hugely well read on Poe, but I was like, there are episodes where I'm like, hang on, I know that name, and I'm like running through trying to find stuff. So yeah,
that's what I presumed, because when we talked about this, you've said this. I mean, I might be misquoting, but this is like your favorite or one of your favorite Poes.
Yeah.
And you were like super psyched for it, and so I'm not gonna lie, watching it, I was like, I'm looking forward to Scott telling me all the random Poe stuff that I've missed, because I've done a bit of a Tonya Todd, and I've avoided anything to do with it. I wanted to watch it, come fresh to talk to you about it, because I've had to resist Reddit, and everybody talking about it on there, and like the horror threads and Reddit and stuff like that, and all the articles. And luckily, I'm not on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X anymore, so like not getting any of those spoilers or anything like that. So for me, it's going to be really interesting. So okay. So my assumptions are now I gathered straight away that everything is named after one of Poe's work. Got that. My other presumption is now I have read The Fall of the House of Usher. I read it in preparation for the show coming out. And obviously there are characters named in that, but I presume all of the other characters are named after Poe characters?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I've made that presumption. That's the other thing I was going to say. So like the Annabelle Lee poetry that Roderick's doing, I'm presuming that's Poe work as well, being woven into the...
I want to say, because I've got it here. So Annabelle Lee, I'm not going to read it all. But it's just a poem called Annabelle Lee, and it's the one that Roderick reads to her. But it's such a beautiful poem. It's about lost, as everything is with Poe. It's about lost love. But it's more sort of slightly upbeat than The Raven. But yeah, no. So Annabelle Lee is about this. Is exactly that. You know, it was many and many years ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maiden there lived, whom you may know by the name of Annabelle Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and to be loved by me. But that's the opening paragraph, and then basically she gets taken away and killed. As you do. Yeah,
love Poe. He's so happy, such a happy fella.
But the one that got me was as I was watching the first episode. Because I'm again like you read stuff or you use Audible and like names stick in weird words like stick in your head, and so the name Fortunato,
yes, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah,
kept sticking out to me. And I was like, Fortunato, why do I know that that's one of them? And I was going through, and it wasn't until the end, when you have the wall, he starts talking to the brick wall, and I was like, oh, I think I know. So there's a story called The Cask of Amontillado, and it's about a guy who's a bit of a drunk, a bit of a sort of not always, but he's like a regular guy, and he has a friend called a colleague here, somebody else called Fortunato, who is a bit of a dipshit. And but they're both wine connoisseurs, but one feels that there's better. These ones were really, really snobby and all this other stuff. And Fortunato, sort of like in it, is described as wearing, the jester costume that the guy wears when he's bricked up. That's the kind of what he is described as wearing in the opening of this story. But he ends up having an affair with the guy's wife. He gets caught, and so he bricks Fortunato and his wife up in the wall. There's that story. So I'm like, oh my god. So yeah, there's like deep cuts like within this. And I'm sat here with my book going like, oh my god.
You're like, I'm so big, the best nerd ever. So the other thing I was going to ask you is, so throughout there's constant talk about ancient Egyptians. There is obviously God, why can't I think of words? What is it you sit at? A desk. Madeline's desk is a sarcophagus and stuff like that. And it's constant throughout, like it's visual throughout, but they talk about it as well. And they talk about is that in Poe's work at all?
It is a little bit. I mean, I think they've pushed it to the fore more so than I'd say is in Poe. But he does often refer like some of his stories. I mean, everything from like there's one called like the Oblong Box. But I'm trying to think of other ones really. But he does refer and has sort of like Egyptian motifs, but he hasn't like got a story set in ancient Egypt or anything like that. A lot of his is more sort of like, I'd say, Renaissance period forward, and that sort of thing. So I do think there's a part where Flanagan's just like, no, that just looks cool. Like I just want, I want, I just want to have like Bruce Greenwood like wielding a khopesh because it looks cool. Like that's pretty much what's going on with some of that.
Well, I wonder if it all comes from the stones from Madeline's eyes, because that's in a Poe story, isn't it?
Is
in Usher. That's in Fall of the House.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
exactly.
So I do think some of it is trying to facilitate other bits. But no, the stories themselves, like I say, it all leads up to this. We'll talk about the end because the fall of the House of Usher. But there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you your thoughts, because I want to get into the stories, because the opening episode, the second episode, Mask of the Red Death, is a kicker. Like, it ends like with a real sort of like gut punch in an amazing way. And I like the Mask of the Red Death is a great story. And we want to get to it. But one of the things I was curious about is the opening of the story, like the very sort of first episode, is them as young kids, and you get sort of to learn their origin. The whole thing with their mother, what were your thoughts around sort of that, like her digging herself out of a grave and all that? Did you get much from that when she attacked, obviously, for the original Fortunato and
Yeah, well, I mean, so for that immediately made me think, funnily enough, of ancient Egypt, and we get more symbolism of that. We get, after this, Maury, so Froderick's wife, is wrapped in bandages. You've got to call him that. It's so good. It's like, Charlotte's being funny, and I love it. She's wrapped in bandages and stuff like that. And so when it's happening, I was like, okay, so like there's this ancient Egypt vibe, mummies, zombies coming back from the death. What really is death? So they're talking to us about death. I was like, okay, I've got it. The House of Usher's going to fall. We've had deaths. We know death's going to happen. It's big on our minds, but it's like, what are the consequences of death? It's who gets to decide who is living and who is not. And that's what I immediately got, because the kids go and talk to their father, who's disowned them, begging for help, saying she's going to die, and they come back, and Madeline decides that their mum's dead.
Yes,
Roderick doesn't, and I believe Madeline truly thinks she's dead. And then they form this plan. They don't want to get social services involved, so they go and bury her, and it's like the responsibility of this young girl to decide who is alive or dead. And I was like, and then her mum raises up, and obviously then goes and kills their father, and it's all traumatic and all this sort of thing. But I thought there was something so interesting there about how it's Madeline making these decisions.
Yeah,
we've already seen her starting to take charge, but over life or death, it is her. She is the female twin making that decision. And I was like, okay, we're getting this. Madeline is that person, and then we sort of get a payoff for that later when it isn't her really who makes the decision, because all the way through you're like, Madeline's in control of this. And then when she realizes it's Werner, it's Madeline who's discombobulated about it. Roderick isn't. And it makes you think, oh, because it was her, she like forced Roderick into it or something like that. She's not had children. And then you get that huge revelation in the last episode. And I love that. I love that slow burn twist of how they've set up Madeline for you as the viewer. And then you get to that final episode, and I was like, oh, you tricky little bastard.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I want to talk about the two siblings. I wanted to talk about Madeline before, because we've talked about the Egyptian part, and we talk about death. I mean, death's a major part of this show. There's two things I want to comment on. So the mother coming back to life, like you say, because Madeline's like, no, she was dead. Like, and I love the scene of when they get back in the house, and it's really well shot when she's behind Roderick, like creepy as, and leaning into, because you've obviously got Roderick sat with Augustus in the Usher house, sort of telling some of the tale. And I love the fact it has sort of, I don't say it nods, but it uses the technique of Hill House, where he's like, turn around, my mother's here. And he's like, I'm not going to turn around. And then you're like, because you're going, what? And then you just see the shadow move off, and you're like, oh shit, she is there. Like, and then it gets more and more literally in your face as the show goes on. So I love that. But do you think it was Werner that brought the mother back? Has she been involved from that point? Like, did she instigate some of this, or was she just waiting for them in 1980?
See, it's so interesting, because then now I just want to talk about Werner forever.
Yeah, we will get to Werner, because she's awesome. And like Carla Gugino is amazing in this.
This is her best Flanagan work.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, I mean, she's like,
yeah,
she's amazing in this. It's just, I mean, this might be like one of her best pieces of work ever. Like, it's like, okay, we'll get onto that.
Yeah,
I was about to go off onto a little. Great question. I don't know, and I like that. I like that it can be open to your interpretation. I like thinking that she isn't involved in it. I like thinking that because she's like a little raven, she's like a little raven. That was so patronizing.
Yeah.
Oh my god, no, you do not want to patronize her. That's terrifying. You know, and it's like she's collecting shiny things, people, right? So can she sense from the moment someone is conceived that they are going to be a shiny person that she can radiate towards? So I don't know, and I like that it's open.
Oh yeah, it's very, I love it is. It's a little bit ambiguous, but that was because I kept going back and being like, I even watched a little bit back, and I was like, do we see her? Is she about? No, we don't see anything, but there's suggestions of things. The other thing is going back to this death. So one of the things that you say about the ending, and we are going to jump around a little bit because I think we need to. The death in this is a theme in the sense as well. Between the two siblings, we learn a lot. But one of the things we obviously know from experiencing Madeleine is that she is mathematically driven. Like, she's all about doing the maths. She's a computer genius. Like, she's inventing these algorithms, like, you know, years before anybody else. Like, she's a true genius, I think, because even Roderick says, like, no, she's like a true genius. And what she's aiming for is this idea of your consciousness being uploaded onto an AI. Like, that's what they're pushing for, and you see she's sort of working towards it on several occasions. And then you obviously see this idea that Roderick has of, you said about the Egyptian sort of themes. He has this idea of, you know, creating tombs, and then you have all this stuff around you, and this idea. But the other thing is, we find that he could have been a poet in the other life. If they hadn't taken the deal, you know, sliding doors, that would have been him, a poet. So he is Poe in this sort of story. And he has this idea he could have been a storyteller, and he could have been all this other stuff. So to me, the one thing I think is interesting is they are both looking for a sense of immortality, but she's doing it through like technological means, and he's doing it through these sort of like, not religious, but this idea of like the fantasy element, the ritual, the magic element, and how that represents them. But the whole thing is about, they know they're going to die. They are well aware of what this means, and they are looking to preserve themselves beyond death in different ways. And so I love how that theme sort of comes up throughout the show, this idea of like, not just legacy, but like immortality. Like, how is it that you can live forever in some way? So yeah, you know, you said about the Egyptian stuff. I think it's really cool that that's laid there, and yeah, is eventually used to great effects. It's for a big final scare at the end.
And it's so interesting what you said as well, especially when it comes to Madeleine, because I remember watching the final episode, and I think it's sort of like in the third episode, maybe, when she gets the stones, and she's really excited to show them to Lenore. And it's great to see her excited about like this physical thing, because we don't see any of that, Madeleine. We don't see where she lives. We don't see where she spends any of her time, apart from in the orbit of the other characters, right? And I think that's really interesting how they've done that, when even like in the past, it's the 70s, isn't it? And she's at Roderick's and Annabelle Lee's house. Like, where does she go afterwards? Where does she live?
It's a really good point. It's a really good point. She's the only character whose house or home you never see.
You never see it. So you never know. Like, basically, she's like a little spectre. Like, people say using little, but she's like a spectre that's like popping up and what she's doing. So I find it interesting that she's so tied into technology, and sort of like, what's that connection between her almost, I was about to say homelessness, but that's not what I mean, like her lack of placement anywhere in technology. And then at the end, when she's quote unquote dead, that Roderick decides to put the stones in and almost bury her as if an ancient Egyptian.
That's it.
And I can't help but think, but does Madeline want that? Because she is a technology person.
Oh no, she did not. No. 100%.
And so I find that so interesting. That's that huge disconnect between him and her, these siblings that have been so close and built this empire, that that like in those final moments of when she's quote unquote dead, that he's, for me, I was like, this isn't true to her character, although she loves all that stuff. You can see by her desk, the things in her office, and I really like that it sort of brings home that they've never been
completely, they've never been completely, they've been close, but it's simpatico. Like there's always been a little bit of a break between them. Which,
and then it's ironic that they build a wall together.
Yes. Yes, 100%. Like, that's the thing. It's all this symbolism that shows in it of them. But when they do, one thing is, it's always when they do Griswold, when they do wall up Griswold in that, in the basement of the building, it's her that does all the talking. Like, she's the one. Roderick just sort of stands there and sort of, does his bit, but doesn't say anything. She's the force that drives them through life. But Roderick's always been the face. It's like they say, behind every great man is a greater woman, that sort of thing. Like, it's she doesn't want to be particularly in the limelight, because, and I like that, because there's a question when she speaks to Werner at the bar, and it shoots back to 1980, and she says, "What would you rather have? Would you rather be rich or famous?" Rich, like without any, qualms or hesitation. It's straight to rich. So yeah, she's got no compunction about being in the limelight. She doesn't want to be that. That's not her thing. She just wants the power that comes with the money and stuff. And so Roderick absorbs that, allowing her to do her things in the background. So they've always worked. They've had like what's the word I'm looking for?
I can't think of the word either.
I'm not. Yeah, look, I was thinking a host. It's called like
Yeah,
they're basically they are in sync, but they've been able. Yeah, you know what I mean. Bloody hell.
But they don't have a healthy relationship.
They do not have a
say that.
Well, this is one of the most toxic shows I think we've ever seen.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love.
Yeah,
like, I know lots of people can't watch shows like Succession because they're like, these people are terrible, and I know so many terrible people in my life. Just because they're rich, it doesn't make them any more or less terrible. And I'm like, I don't know. The world's on fire. I really want to watch terrible people.
Especially if they're all going to
get their comeuppance.
Especially if they're going to get cut in half, then I'm all for it. But that does. We've talked about those. I want to sort of get some of the characters. We are going to get to Werner. We are definitely going to.
Right, but okay, we should. Sorry, I know you've got notes and stuff. I'm going to interrupt it and ruin it all. We should talk about the siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be really great is if one of us, happy for it to be you, did a little rundown of the siblings, and then you and I are going to rate them live, best to worst.
As in human beings?
Yeah. Best to worst human beings.
Fair enough.
I just thought of this, by the way.
Well, let's go for...
Probably should have messaged you first.
No, that's fine. Let's go in age.
Okay.
Because they die in age order.
Yes.
So we have Perry, Usher. I have remember now, so I remember the order they go in. Yeah. Then it's Camille, who, can I say, Kate Siegel is also phenomenal in this.
Like, that's so good.
She scared me. I hated her, and I was hugely attracted to her all in like an instant. It was kind of confusing. Right, then we have Leo, Usher. They're the three bastards.
That's four bastards, aren't there?
No, because Vic's not considered one of the bastards.
Yes, of course, yes.
She sort of weasel her way in. So then there's Vic, and then there is Tamerlane, and then there's Frederick. So that's them in age. So so Perry, Camille, Leo, Vic, Tamerlane, and Frederick. Are the six. So now
Yeah.
go on then. Let's sit live. We're doing this now. I think this is interesting. So you're going to say, so in who are the worst human beings in
Yeah.
that?
So do we
This
want to
is
start?
really hard. Like,
Do
they're
we
all
want to start?
pretty awful.
Do we want to start with best to worst or worst to best?
Best to worst.
Okay.
Because let's start on a low note. End on a low note. I mean, yeah.
So I will say they are all terrible. So
Yes.
this is not oh, I'd love to be friends with them because they are all horrific people. But I would say it goes Camille is the best. I think she is really good at her job, and her job just happens to be terrible. I've known many PR people. Most of them are lovely. Camille is a terrible PR person. Not as it, she's very good at her job, but she's a terrible.
She's a brilliant PR person.
Yeah,
terrible human being. Yeah.
But actually, like, she doesn't really do anything that bad. She's just, I don't know. She kind of like supports Fox News and stuff, which is shit. But also, she is like, this is the terrible family I'm in. I'm kind of a terrible person. I'm going to embrace it. Yeah. And she also gets a bit of a pass from me because when she fires her employees who don't want to have sex with her anymore, which is in their contracts, she gives them severance pay. And I think not many people in America would do that. No. So I'm trying to find some pluses then. And then I'd say the next is Leo, Napoleon. I would say because he is clearly a cheating bastard who also doesn't really do anything and just takes loads of drugs and lives a hedonistic lifestyle. But that doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. He is a bad person, but he doesn't really do anything.
He's not hurting anyone particularly, is he?
No.
Yeah, he's not a drug dealer. He's not out on the street selling.
And in fact, he's the opposite of that. Like, he says to Perry, he's like, you're better than this. You're not a cheap drug pusher. He's like, this is recreational. He's weirdly supportive of Frederick when Frederick wants drugs and gives him lots of advice. Sure, he kills an imaginary cat and is a terrible boyfriend and locks a woman out on his balcony that he's cheated on his boyfriend with. But overall, not really doing anything too bad. Just one of those bad people in sort of like overall bad people in society. You have loads of money and don't do anything good with it, right? He could be doing something good.
He's the awful best friend in a rom-com.
Yes, thank you, perfect. Okay, so then it starts to get a lot harder to rate them. Now, I would probably say, considering I absolutely hated him and I was so glad he died in the way he did, Perry is next. Yeah. Perry is a psychopath and is awful to people, every single person around him. And all he wants to do is own everybody around him. And he is terrible. But his other siblings are worse.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. At this point, we get like much of a muchness, really, isn't it?
It's
sort of like,
And
he was going to blackmail all those people.
And he was going to blackmail all of those people. So next up, I would say it's probably Tammy, as I like to call her. She'd hate it, Tamerlane, because again, another bad person, is abusive to her husband, and like it's just like really not great. Has many emotional issues. Has to have sex workers have sex with her husband to have intimacy, but she's also terrible to all the people around her. The one bit of softness we see with her with Juno makes me think if she wasn't an usher, she could have actually been a good person.
Yes. But or she'd have stayed with her mother.
Yeah, exactly. Or she'd stayed with her mother, but she's so corrupted by everything around her. And the way she treats people, the way she dismisses people she thinks that they're lesser than her, is very bad. I mean, she also does other bad things. But I realise it's taking a long time.
The other thing is with Samantha Sloyan, who plays Tamerlane, the other problem is she's one of these actresses. She was so horrible when she was in Midnight Mass that some of that carried over.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was a bit like, oh, I'm gonna hate you. You might even be the nice person in this. I'm gonna kind of hate you. So yeah.
She's quite fanatical in this as well. So she's great at doing that character.
She's she plays like that scary, focused, really well. Scary really well. Yeah.
the way she controls how she speaks when she's a character, like, is unbelievable. I would love to hear an audiobook by her, but I would also be terrified at the same time.
Have her reading some Poe. That'd be quite
Oh my
interesting.
God. I am up for that. We need to make that happen. So the next, so this is maybe a controversial choice, but I am going to say Victorine, because terrible, terrible animal cruelty, about to do terrible cruelty to human beings in trials that have not been signed off, that will kill the woman who is Verna, but who she thinks is somebody else, and chops up little chimpanzees, carries them out in her bag. Terrible, terrible human being, and plays off like this whole, but I just want to impress my father. I just want to save the world stuff, like that worst type of, like, quote unquote humanitarian person, because she's not doing it for the good of humanity or society. She's doing it for personal gain and is committing atrocious acts. And then my favorite is maybe not the right word, but my favorite Usher child, Freddie / because as soon as Henry Thomas came in, I was like, by the end of this, he is going to be the most despicable character. The way he plays it at the beginning, you just know he's got that horrible, abusive person, like the way, and he acts so like he's like the way he's
a horrible good guy. He's the horrible good guy.
That's it. Yeah, like,
I'm a nice guy.
Nice guy. That's it. I couldn't remember what it was. And I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. And like that connection that he's got with Lenore, and I'm like, but he doesn't actually. And then there's like some parenting things, and the way he dismisses her, the way he talks to his wife Maury, and stuff like that. And I was like, he is going to be so despicable by the end of this series. And that his
is the like you say, his is the most revealing arc, because you sort of know that he's going to be despicable, as you say. Like it's not hugely obvious how, and it's obviously drug fuel towards the end. But once the gloves are off, like, you know how the ending of this is almost like he's taken the drugs, he's done what he's done to his wife, which really, like, made me gasp. Like, when I figure out what he's done. So, because he says about having a moment or an act of authority to keep people in line, and you realize he's pulled some of her teeth out with a pair of pliers. And I was just like, Jesus Christ! Like, I was at the dentist like last week, and I'm still cringing. But that scene, and she's letting a bloody mouth, and so I was just like, horrific. Like, that really got to me. And to me, it felt like this has opened a gateway in him. Like, he's always known this is here, but now he knows he can do it. Like, this has opened that perverse, vindictive gate, and, like, no one is going to be safe now.
Yeah, and all he needed was a reason, which made me think back about his relationship with Maury, and, like, because we don't know anything about her past, and obviously he's completely rich, and we hear there's like this thing in the first episode where she's making the cakes, and he's saying you're getting really good at it, and there's sort of like a hint that she was doing something before, but then she quit to become his wife and a mother. Now she's reclaiming some part of herself, and he's dismissive of what part she's reclaiming, because he's busy bowling, and that cake is amazing, and I was like, oh, you slimy little bastard. She's probably been spending like 15 years pretending to be the perfect wife because she's scared. But I wouldn't say that he necessarily physically abused her before the time. No. But she knows there's something within him. So she'll have seen
glimpses of it. Yeah. Or yeah. And I agree. I wholly agree with like this. It's an interesting one that you say, because I think, like you say, I think to me, Leo and like Camille sort of slightly interchangeable in different ways. Because Leo just wants to, like, literally says, like, I just want to be sort of left out. I want to play computer games, and I want to be. I feel you, Leo. Yeah, I want to be a bit of a shit, but generally, like, I'm not hurting anyone. Like, he sort of throws parties, and even to be fair to him, like, he's actually said, like, when his boyfriend calls him out and says about the drugs and stuff, Julius calls him out, and he says, "No, I've got to control." There's a moment where he clearly does care for Julius. Like, he's not unfeeling. Like, he knows he often knows what he's doing is the wrong thing, but he knows he can get away with it because he's an usher, that kind of thing. Camille just sort of enjoys the power, I think, and so she
I think you
scares
might
me a
be
bit
right.
too.
Yeah, maybe they need to be swapped on my list. Yeah,
but they're
I
the
just
only
really
two.
liked Camille.
Oh no, she's amazing. Like, again, like I said, Kate Siegel is just so engrossing. Like you said, there's characters in this that sort of like just well, I think the whole cast, I think everyone in this does a phenomenal job. But there's certain ones where they're like, you are a flame point. Like, in each, you are going to be the center of that scene, and they just run with it and they just go with it. And I think fair play to them. What's interesting to go through the stories, just to sort of bring it back to sort of the Poe comparisons. A Midnight Dreary, the first episode, is obviously sort of sets all things out and all that kind of stuff, and so it's a bit that's obviously the first line of the Raven. When it had all the Mask of the Red Death, I was like, oh, they're just going to name them after random stories or whatever. So I wasn't expecting much. But then when the Mask of the Red, when that second episode, so if the Mask of the Red Death is a guy called Prospero, who is a lord, who over an area that is covered with plague. They're suffering from this plague, the Red Death. But within his court, with the rich people all in this court, in this castle, and he just basically watches the poor die. Like, he basically humiliates them and throws scraps to them and other stuff, and then decides to have this big party. And at the party, he's sort of like, "Ha, look at me, I'm amazing," and he's sort of, he's really like that hedonistic kind of person. And there is this character that starts killing the people off, and it's dressed in red, and then when it's revealed who it is under the mask, it's himself. Like, it's his face looking back at him. But it's this idea that the Red Death was always inevitable and is inescapable and that sort of thing. But it's all about like hedonism and putting yourself above the peasantry and all this other stuff. So it's and so but what they turn it into in this episode is brilliantly a way of modernizing it. And Perry, who is actually called Prospero, is like this phenomenal character that does this stuff, and it's just like you say, it's going to be an orgy at midnight, and we're going to do all this other stuff. And it starts to introduce the supernatural elements, because we see Werner on the roof at one point next to the tanks. So you go, oh, okay, well, there's something telling me there. But constantly, I'm like, okay, well, how far is this going to go? Because in Mask of the Red Death, it's described as being this plague-like thing. So I can't see they're going to go that far. What's going to happen? Build up to the party, you've all this stuff, and you're going like, okay, well, what's going to happen? And then the moment those first few drops and you hear the hissing,
the sound in this show is amazing.
Jesus, yeah, the sound design in this is brilliant. But those last 4 minutes of that episode, you've had all of it in the party. Werner's been there, and she said, leave now, and she tried to save Froderick's wife, whose name escapes me, Morella. Yeah, he's trying to save her, leave now, and she sort of decides not to, or sort of it breaks the spell. But those people are writhing on the floor, like, and their skin just like slooshing off them, all sort of stuff. It's graphic, but it's so well done. Like, this is, horrific in the truest form. Like, there are scares in this, but it's also going to give you horrific imagery that you're going to have to deal with. And that was the moment at the end of the second episode. I was like, oh, they are not fucking about now.
It's just so unexpected from Mike Flanagan as well, because he's really hasn't done gore. I was thinking back and thinking, what's the goriest stuff that he's done? And I haven't really been able to point.
The broke neck lady is probably
right.
That is probably it. Maybe some stuff in Midnight Mass,
I
with
don't
the
feel like,
vampire, but it was never
but it wasn't
excessively
gory,
no.
exactly. And so when it started happening, I was like, holy shit, fella. I was like, how long have you been holding this in for?
Yeah.
And it's he doesn't cut away from it.
No.
And that was another interesting thing that I thought. I was like, I don't enjoy that. I've gone back and watched a couple of episodes to sort of refresh my memory on some things. And I watched the second episode and I skipped that bit until Werner comes in and puts the mask on him, because I was like, and I am not bothered by gore.
Mm.
But I was just like, do you know what? There's a lot going on in the world at the moment. I just don't need to see that
Yeah.
again. But I found it so interesting that it went on for so long. And then in the next episode, we continue to see it.
Yeah. Oh, I think Mike Flanagan hates this character. It's the only way I could think, the realization I have. Like, he was just like, no, fuck Prospero. We're going to watch you burn for 2 episodes. No, but this idea, as I say, the stories, because I want to quickly read them out. You get Murder in the Rue Morgue. I'm careful of spoilers, because you're right. That this is going to be, hopefully, will be a reignition of ignition of people reading Poe. But I am going to give you some spoilers. Right? So, Murder in the Rue Morgue is often considered the first detective story. Has the kind of detective format that you would later then get with Agatha Christie and others as well, sort of like those kinds of things. And it's about these murders in a morgue, and they're not sure whose it was that was committed these murders. It turns out to have been orangutan.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is episode 3. Yeah.
This is episode 3. So Murder in the Rue Morgue, and I love the fact that it's called Rue, and they give RUE a reason. Like they give it, it's an acronym. Same with the Black Cat. This introduction of the Black Cat, and Black Cat's appearing quite a lot in Poe. But again, like this idea of sort of lost, losing your mind, insanity, and this, this whole thing. It's all there. And again, you see about the graphic nature of this. One of the things that sort of each of these episodes has something that truly freaked me out. You said about this first in the second episode, it's the people being burnt with acid and stuff. The second one that really sort of threw me a little bit was you have we are going to get to Werner when she starts aping out and stuff, and she rips open her shirt and she's got the cuts and the sutures down there, and then Camille lifts up her phone and it's an enraged chimp looking at her. Man, that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, same here. Same. It's when she first gets up and she's walking along that steel cable, and I was like, I know what you're doing. And I don't feel good about it.
No.
I do, because it's
really well done.
The performance is amazing. The way it's directed, it's amazing. Yeah, exactly, really well done. But I do not feel good right now. And when Camille is like, "Fuck it, I know what's about to happen." Yeah. Just raises her camera, and it's just like, this is so good. Yeah, this is so good. And again, there's and there's that throughout where we're seeing Werner and she's personifying
each of the things.
I'm going to wait until we get to Werner.
Yeah, we will. We'll get quickly. I'll run through
because I really like what you're talking about.
Yeah, I will run through the stories. No, but the Black Cat, when Leo goes nuts and he's smashing up the house, like that's really unnerving for me.
Yeah.
Because like that's a loss of sanity, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's the drug-fueled rage," and he's smashing up the hammer, like the house with Thor's hammer. That was kind of funny, but
so good.
Yeah, but like that's really unnerving. And then you see when he goes over, like that's the actual death isn't as scary to me as him smashing up the house, which was like, yeah, this could be someone losing their shit.
And we see beforehand in that episode him falling and smashing into the ground. So we know that's his death. And so we're just waiting. That build up so good. The pacing of that build up
just keeps teasing.
Keeps and going. We've already been visually told how he's about to die.
And as you say, you said before, the imaginary cat, because again, when you finally see the photo of Werner, she's like holding like a squirrel or something else. Bizarre. Telltale Heart, Vic sort of Victorine's meltdown, the guilt and everything, and the reveal at the end of that, because you've got that like the squeaky thing, and that's the heart monitor thing. going off. And obviously, much like the Telltale Heart, so the Telltale Heart is a guy enraged kills his former lover's current lover and takes his heart and has it keeps it in a box under his floorboards.
I thought it was floorboards, yeah, because I can't remember the story properly, but I thought it was his floorboards, yeah.
And it's, the guilt of what he has done keeps coming back, and he can hear the heart still beating. And eventually, when the police come to take him, it's because he's been acting so strangely, and he says, like, can't you hear it? And he ends up pulling the floorboards up and presenting the heart, and they're all like, Jesus, and he's like, still beating, and they're like, it's not, nutter. But the end of this, again, this is one of those moments where I was like, I didn't know where this was going. So you have like Victorine sort of like, she keeps hearing this thing. There's clearly guilt there, and I'm like, okay, well, what is this guilt? How is this leading to her death? And I know she had this argument, but then when you see her throw that thing, I was like, okay, that you never saw it hit anything, you never see a body, and I was like, so I was weirded by that. But then that reveal at the end, so her dad Roderick comes to visit her because he's the one that needs this heart thing because of his vascular dementia. And he's like, what's that sound? And she's like, yeah, right. Like, you can hear it too. But then he says, and what's that smell? And then I was like, oh no. And then the memories will come rushing back to her. And then you see her girlfriend, Ali, and like cut open and just this thing on a dead heart. And again, like the ending where I'm just like, Jesus.
But do you know what creeps me out the most? That when she's talking to her and her dad, she's going, no, she needs to apologize for what she just said. And you see Bruce Greenwood's reaction.
Yeah.
And you see how he's like, this is not a safe space, but I need to talk to her as if this is all really happening.
Yeah.
And then he just cracks and is like, she's dead.
Yeah.
It's like so good. He's like, he's so horrified. And he's like, okay, we need to get her out of here. Because she may murder me, and we've got to do it. And he's funny, like, fuck it, she's dead.
Yeah.
So good. So creepy. And just the way he then has to switch and just sort of like try and force her into reality.
That's it, yeah, because that's what it is, isn't it? He's trying to be sort of like a bit of a cold shower, like just a shock, like, and it sort of works because she's like, you're right, her heart is useless.
Yeah,
we need a fresh one. And so she sort of tries to cut her own heart out. Incredible. A great ending. All these have been pretty well known, I would say, Poe stories. And we're going to get to The Pit and the Pendulum, which is a very short story. I'm going to quickly jump on. It's literally, I think, like 5 pages, it might be less than that. And it's about a guy who wakes up in the dark, and all he can hear is the noise of the blade pendulum swinging above him, and it's him narrating how it sounds, and it's a phenomenally scary story. Page 15. So let me just sort of, but all those have been, big. Yes, it says it starts with, I was sick unto death with that long agony, and when they at length unbound me, and I was permitted to sit, I felt that my senses were leaving me. The dread sentence of death, was the last of distinct accentuation that reached my ears. It's that sort of like, he's just the rest of it is him in this dark room describing how he was just left to be tortured, and it's horrendous, but so I love the idea. But this pit and the pendulum just being trapped, being unable to move, and this thing getting closer to you, and it slices Froderick in half, and that's cool as well. Goldbug is a bit of a deep cut.
Okay, tell me.
So I'd never really heard of. I've read bits and pieces. It's not one I've read, but Goldbug is about obsession. So and it's literally about a gold bug. Like, it's about this guy who I've not read it all, or I sort of did a bit of research, but it's basically a guy who gets fixated on this gold bug, and it's a story about that. And obviously, that's what Tamerlane gets obsessed with is this idea of the gold bug as being this health thing. It's about her fixation on doing something good, proving herself, and all this other stuff. And it's So again, like, it plays out in a similar way that like someone's obsession is what ends up killing them and stuff. And it's always about them, bringing it upon themselves. So I was fascinated to look at, wow, they've really gone like a deep dive on some of this stuff. But yeah, just to have it, so it's not just the fact that, because often we have TV shows and they'll go, oh, every episode is going to be named after a poem or a story or whatever, and you go, cool. No, this was actually laying out and utilizing, and as you said, like a modernization of the whole thing is the fall of the House of Usher, which is nothing about family. It's literally about a brother and sister and a person who's visiting them, and this idea of a curse and why they can't have children and all this other stuff. And it ends with the house literally sort of falling into a bog. But this is like, in the middle, we're going to insert actual, like, an anthology series of Poe stories. And I thought that was so phenomenally well done that, like, round of applause to Flanagan and co for pulling that together.
And it's so good. And it's those threads, it's all those threads that are so good. And each episode is a character study.
Yes.
So nothing feels wasted. Nothing feels like filler. It's, as with everything, Mike Flanagan, everything's very deliberate. And I don't feel like there is really a second wasted with any of the characters. There's no point, for me personally, where I went, this doesn't need to be in here. This feels a tad over long. Why is this happening? He has got the Back to the Future storytelling down.
Yes.
Everything is there for a reason. And that's across 8 episodes.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
And each episode is meticulous, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah. And I think that's why I like it so much, because I think that's the strength of Hill House. I think that's the strength of Midnight Mass. And then it's the same here. I feel love and care and passion, like reverence for the source material, but wanting to elevate that source material.
Yes.
In every single thing that he's put in those 3 shows, but especially in this. And I just think that's so amazing. And for me, this feels like it's like 10 years worth of love and work. I feel that on the screen, and it probably isn't. It's probably like
it's a weekend. This was
because he's ridiculous.
Yeah. I just want to say before, because we'll after this, we'll get on to 2 of the characters, and we'll talk. But one of them will be Werner. But the other thing I just wanted to mention, you say about Hill House. And this is obviously the 3rd in his House trilogy, because I think Midnight Mass is great, but you've had like Haunting of Hill House, Bly Manor, and then Fall of the House of Usher. But because they've both got house and other things, I actually feel that, having watched this is the duology with Hill House. For some key reasons. So both about families, like, particular kinds of families and the trauma that they've had. But one of the things that I was fascinated to watching is this is about sort of like a close-knit family being torn apart, whilst Hill House is about a family that was torn apart coming together through a tragedy. And how they find all this sort of like, for it being scary and kind of sad, there's a love and a sweetness to Hill House, I think, that comes through by the end. And so I feel that this feels like the antithesis. They are the antithesis of each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, they are at each end of the spectrum, but they are connected in so many ways. Like, I feel you can watch Hill House and House of Usher, and they are a pair. Like, this is the yin and yang of Mike Flanagan, in so many ways.
Yeah, this is my Prince Charles Cinema in London TV double bill, all-nighter. You have to get there in the morning, change into pajamas, watch. So you'd start with, I would say you'd start with Hill House, because you'd want to watch this at night, but Hill House is so scary. You want to watch Hill House at night. So actually you'd have to do this during the day. Then Hill House starts at midnight, and then you all tumble out of the PCC in the morning, have a photo taken in front, and then somehow have to get like tube and bus.
16 hours. I mean, you're looking at 16 hours worth of watching. Yeah,
This
yeah.
would be my double bill.
But I do that would be tough going, but it'd be amazing. Stick on the nappy and let's go. But there is just something there. I honestly think, and I'd love to speak to Mike Flanagan and say, like, right, because I think this came from Hill House. Like, there's something he's got. Yes, it's all about Poe, and there's all that wonderful structure and the symbolism and the use of the stories. But there is something here that started in Hill House, where like Bly Manor was like a bit of a watered down sequel of doing the same kind of thing. And Midnight Mass is him going off and doing something completely different, and it's brilliant. But this is him coming back and going like, this is what Bly Manor should have been. I shouldn't have tried to do the same thing. This is born of Hill House for me, and in no bad way. Like they are intrinsically linked for me.
And it's about families. When he's doing work about family and relationships, that's when he is at his strongest. I don't know if he was raised by family therapists or something. But obviously I'm being a bit dismissive on purpose, but he gets it, and he gets how a family can be completely torn apart but still love each other, and they can still be kindness, even in the terrible people in House of Usher. And these are terrible people. There are these moments of kindness, and not just from Lenore. We see it from some of the other characters, and I'm like, you're all despicable, but if you weren't this family, if they hadn't made the deal, you would all probably be good people.
Yeah, potentially.
And I love that. I love that in all of his stories,
there's moments of tenderness from them, aren't there? That's the thing. For all of them have a moment of tenderness where you go like, oh shit, like there is something.
And we can recognize that in ourselves and our own families. And I think that's why his work's so interesting, and why I revisit it a lot, because I think he just God's sounding a bit wanky, but like he just kind of gets humanity and wants to explore that on screen.
Yes.
And I find that fascinating. I find the way he presents it really fascinating.
Yes. Let's just quickly we'll touch on two sort of other characters that exist, mainly to facilitate the story, but are still great. Carl Lumley as Oggy, or Austin Dupine, who is great.
Yes, so good in this.
Great character, and he's the whole sort of him and Roderick sitting opposite in the decaying house and stuff. Like they're both so good, and then both have moments of fright and anger and everything else. Also, did you ever watch Reacher? Just want to say.
No, I didn't watch Reacher. No.
Okay, so Prime on Reacher, the young version of Madeline and the young version of Oggy are both in Reacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when when they're in this, I was just like, "Woo! That must have been quite good fun." So anyway, but the other one is Mark Hamill as Arthur Pym.
So when he first came on, I was like, "Who is that?" I was like, "I recognise that person." And it really took me a moment. Now, I am somebody who has watched Star Wars a disgusting amount of times. And I was like, holy shit, it's Mark Hamill. And because I've been avoiding doing a Tonya and avoiding spoilers and reading everything about it, I had no clue that he was in it. And I was like, he is amazing in this.
He is. Yeah.
Like, why are you making Mark Hamill terrify me? I don't like this.
Yeah.
But in the best way.
The Pym
what
Reaper.
Have you done? What have you done to Mark Hamill?
Yeah, he's great. I love his voice. I love the fact
his voice is amazing.
That you start to fight. It's a little bit Jokerish, like it's that he's from his Jokerish, but I love the fact you start finding out about little things about him, like his world expedition and the shit he got up to then. But my favorite moment of all his stuff that he does, because he does some great. He's great. He is. He's really good in it. But is when he sits down with Verna and she sort of says like, "Here's all this shit. I can get you off. Like that file can be found, or it could be lost. That's what I'm giving you." And he's like, "I don't want to owe you anything. I'm good, thank you very much. I'm going to let this play out." But it's the fact that he's presented with this clearly supernatural being, and he's just like takes it in his stride. And he's like, "Yeah, I've seen some shit," and this is just more of that. So you know what? crack on.
That's what I like about his character, because he is who he is. He's
Yeah.
not like the Usher family who
No.
have two sides of them and put one face forward and like, you know, but are actually like despicable people and all. You know, they're he is. This is who I am, and I'm never changing that. This is just it.
Yeah.
And you know, and I respect a character like that,
Well,
as evil as he is. Like he is who he is, and he's damn good at what he does.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's their attorney, but also like all these other things for them. And so I found myself like, especially towards sort of the last two episodes, especially when him and Madeline are having conversations, and I was like, who is the power in the room when he's in there? And I find that so interesting. He's like the shadowy guy in the background who actually
he's the fixer.
And it really does wield all the power, because although they've made this deal with Werner, they still need somebody to clear it all up.
Yeah, and he knows where all the bodies are buried, mainly because he buried them, kind of thing. And
before he had the conversation with Werner, I was thinking, is he like she is? Is he?
Oh,
yeah. I was like, is he like a god, a goddess, something of mischief, or something like that? And then of course he has the conversation with them. I was like, well, that's that theory gone. But the more I saw of him throughout the episodes, I was like, has he been placed with the Usher family?
Is he more? Yeah. That's interesting. Like, because he does feel kind of supernatural with what he knows and how he finds things out, like the knowledge and the information he keeps spouting.
And he doesn't react to anything.
No,
like it's so interesting in the third episode, and the police officer saying, you know, our guys are all vomiting everywhere, and he just walks in, and it's like, obviously I know that's there because of the terrible things that he's done to show us he's not shocked by any of these things, but it also made me start thinking, whoa, like, is he some sort of mystical being as well? Sadly, not.
No, but you
just
say
a terrible human being.
Yeah, but you say about respect. He has probably one of my favorite funny moments in the show, but also you say about respect. After everything, like when he is arrested and he's been walked up to the court, like Vernon turns up to sort of pay her respects. Like, wow, fair play. Like, you let this play out, and you're, you know, doing. She clearly respects him, which I thought was really cool. But also when they have the photographs.
Oh my god, absolutely the funniest bit.
And Roderick's like, enhance, and he's like, it doesn't do that. He's like, I've seen all the movies. Enhance. He's like, I can zoom. That's the best I can do. He's like, well, do that then. It just makes it blurry.
Good.
And he's
the
like,
way he delivers it.
Yeah. And Roger's like, well, look, zoom then. And he's like, it makes it worse. And he's just like, it would be better if it was enhanced. And he's just like, you can just hear him go. It's so deadpan and so well delivered.
So good.
Right.
Are we going to do it?
Let's talk about Werner. Carla Gugino. Powerhouse in this. And, you know, go on, I'll let you go first. What have you got to say? I've got thoughts, but like, it's just, yeah.
I mean, she's the best thing in this, obviously. I'm not saying anything new or exciting there. In terms of her performance and of how interesting she is as a character. And as I was talking about before, for me, it's, you know, what is she? And in my head, I started thinking she's like, I don't think she's good or bad. I don't think she's an agent of anything. I just think she is one of these entities that exists, and her existence, the things that she likes, like I said, is basically she is a raven, shiny things. And in the world that we've built, those shiny things are people and are personalities that for some reason society holds up, that are deemed important. So she gravitates towards them. And I love that all she's doing is presenting them with a choice. This is your choice.
Yes.
And you can do whatever you want with it. I am not going to... Well, she does certainly judge people in the end, but we'll get to that. I'm not going to judge you when presenting you with this choice, and you go and do it. And it feels... for me, I would be really interested to find out if you think it's her toying with humanity for her amusement or not, because I don't think it is. I don't think it's for her amusement. I think this is just the reason she exists.
Yeah.
And her job, it's not even her job, it's just her reason for existing is having to present people with this, and they go and do it. Or is she like a god tinkering?
It's this level, isn't it? It's this level of power. What is she? And I have sort of thought on this in the last couple of days. Because again, like, she's the Raven. That's obviously Verna being an acronym. Acronym? That's not the right word, is it?
No, what is it? It's
anagram.
Thank you.
There you go. Got it eventually. Of Raven. So that's what she is. She is the Raven, I think. But I was like, okay, well, what is that? I mean, in Poe, in the poem, the Raven, the Raven is just a Raven. It's the person in the room that gives it power and gives it this mystique. By all the Raven says is nevermore. But with her, I was like, you said, is she a god? Is she the devil? Is she whatever? Now, there's a couple of lines where they insinuate different things. Obviously, they talk about, as you said, sort of like the idea of Egyptology has come up repeatedly. So there's a number of gods there. It's not that kind of thing where you've got multiple gods, a pantheon of gods. And you've said about the trickster gods kind of thing, that those things exist. And she also makes a reference at one point about a devil at the crossroads, which we know. There's obviously a story of everything from blues singers, gaining the power, all of a sudden becoming amazing guitar players and singers and all this other stuff, and selling their souls at the crossroads for fame and fortune. There is that, but as you say, is she a force for? Does she have an agenda? I think is the question, and I don't think she does, but I do think she get something, because the other thing is they actually say to her about collecting souls, and she's like, oh well, we know they don't exist, like, it's a fallacy, like, that's not why I'm doing this. So it's not like she isn't the devil collecting souls for hell, like that's dismissed. So it can only be that doing this is some sort of like, well, I'm an immortal being and I've got these powers, so I do this to either entertain myself or just as a sort of an anthropological sort of experiment of like, if I present these awful people with this opportunity, like, what will happen? But I've got to bring it to an end. I can't let it. It's like running an experiment, isn't it? Like, you can only do, like, when they do like mice or sort of like germs and viruses, we can only let it multiply to a certain point. Then we've got to kill it off. And that's what this feels like. Is like, I'm going to run this. I'm going to run this experiment to see what happens. And I'm only going to let it run so far. And then we're going to firebomb the whole thing.
Do you think she cares about humanity?
Difficult question. It's a really difficult question because there's sort of suggestion that she does. Like, she's presenting the Ushers, especially Roderick, with, when that great scene when she finally confronts him and she's like, they have the bodies falling from the sky of all the people that have been killed by ligodone and other drugs and stuff. She's presenting him with the consequences and saying, this is you. But she's not saying he's evil. At no point does she say, like, she's like, this is you, like, you did this, like, you can't hide from this. But at no point is she saying, like, you're an evil, foul human being and shall be punished. Like, this isn't a punitive act. It's more of a sort of like, sort of a bit of a told you so. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, this is what you've done. You got to face it now. Like, time to face the music. So I don't. No, and for now, I'll tell you actually, the definitive thing that tells me that she does not is she could have chosen to let Lenore live.
Yeah.
And although she says about Lenore's death being the one that leads to save millions of people down the road, she's only saying that to sort of mollify Lenore. Like, I don't think she gives a shit. But she could, if she really cared about humanity, she'd have had that moment of saving that one good thing that's come out of this. But she doesn't. She fireballs the lot. So no, I don't
And
think
a
she does.
deal's a deal, isn't it?
Well,
though?
exactly.
She,
Yeah.
We see that Madeline straight away goes out and gets contraception, and it's like, well, I'm not having any fucking kids,
Yes.
because I'm not passing this horrificness on to them, which I have a lot of respect for. Whereas Roderick, is he just having more and more kids because he thinks that means he'll outdo the curse? Is he doing it because he doesn't believe in it? Is he doing it because he just doesn't care?
He says he's forgotten. As like Madeline clearly
He
hasn't.
though.
Well, no, well again, this comes back to the types of people they are. Madeline hasn't
Yeah.
forgotten. Like she's a very calculated mathematical person. She deals in material facts. And although sort of like, she may have repressed it, like she knows the point, like she gets it. I think Roderick, being a narrative driven person, a fantasist even, is like, oh, it's all a fairy tale, we're doing this for legacy and all this other stuff. Like he's building a story for himself as well as a legacy. So no, I think you're right. I think he's particularly forgotten. They have suppressed it in different ways.
And for me, we'll get back to Werner in a second, sorry. Is it shows the differences in their characters, as in their individual characters. So from the very beginning, we're sort of told that Madeline isn't, because she's a woman, she's an older woman, you expect her to be maternal, nurturing, all of those sort of things, and she isn't. She's not at all. But yet she actively chooses not to have children because she doesn't want to pass this on to them, right? So she makes a real choice to not pass horrificness on to other human beings. Whereas Roderick, who is a father, who is doing things for his family, for his wife, they've got no money, their child's sick, who we're supposed to be seeing as the hero character. So we're supposed to be disliking Madeline because she acts like a man, and liking Roderick because he acts like a woman and worries about his family. And then it's revealed throughout that Roderick is not a good person and doesn't care about his family and takes the deal straight away, doesn't even hesitate. And it's Madeline that hesitates. And I think I love that subversion of men and women, and of that reveal at the end of that actually maybe Madeline wasn't a bad person.
Well, she was. Let's be clear.
But she's done bad things. And
yes.
She's a bad person. Like she's done very terrible things. But it's like, this is a terrible reference, but for banned books, we're talking about Kite Runner, and we're talking about how the main character in the Kite Runner sees a horrific crime and doesn't do anything about it. And we all think that we would be the people who would stand up and do something about it. But in reality, most of us don't. And reading that in that book is kind of a harsh
wake up
back
call,
to earth, wake up call, yeah. And I kind of felt like that about Madeline's character. She does so many terrible things. I'm not saying that she is a good person, but I liked that. And I liked that it was her who took Werner seriously and took that night and everything that happened seriously, because Madeline, as we know, has had to fight against the oppression from men for like her entire life, from the moment she was born, because her father wouldn't own them, and then trying to build a career and being dismissed. Her, basically it sounds like everything she does gets stolen, all of that sort of thing. And for me, like, that works really well with Werner's character. And there isn't time to explore it in the TV show, and I like that they don't, but it gets me thinking about the two of them and what they could have caused, her and Werner, if Roderick was out of the picture and she just did the deal with Werner. Because for me as well, in those scenes in the bar, that connection is between Madeline and Werner.
Oh, 100%.
And I love that. And then I love it's Roderick who is the face, but does all these despicable things and hurts every single person around him. And I've completely lost my point, but yes, it's that Werner, for me, chooses Madeline. She doesn't choose Roderick.
No, I think Madeline is what attracts Werner. Madeline is most definitely the sort of like that flickering light that she's like, as you said, that shiny object. She's like, oh, this is new. This is something different. I haven't seen. I haven't seen this before.
Yeah.
Roderick's because she said, oh, he could have been a poet. Like, he'd have been broke, but he'd have been a poet. Like, he's 10 a penny. Like, we've seen that before. You're something new. Like, I want to see what I can do with you. Yeah, I think the whole thing was, as you say, was turned on between Madeline and Werner. That's the and it's the fact that Roderick runs with it is because he created the children is the interesting thing. One thing I would say about the pair of them, though, when he is confronted with what he's done, like, he never becomes, I would never say he's remorseful. Okay, Roderick's never has remorse for the people he has impacted outside of the family. Like, I think he feels sorry. He feels guilt for what he has done to his family, but to anyone that is addicted to Ligadone, doesn't give a shit. Like, that's the thing.
Does not give a shit.
But there's a great speech by Madeline because he does sort of waver at one point, and she's like, "No, fuck them. Like, we created it, fine, but they took it. You didn't have to take it, but they took it. They became addicted. You didn't have to do that. Like, it's like she's justifying it by saying, like, look, we may have produced it, but like, the people are weak. The masses are stupid. Like, that's the kind of like, but that's this whole thing about capitalism and power, isn't it? That's where it leads into that. But it is this thing of that they see themselves separate from the hoi polloi, as it were.
They're better than everybody else. They 100%. Would never get addicted to Ligadone.
No.
And of course you wouldn't, because you're rich white people.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't have to. You've got, Leo's got all the other good drugs. But it is this. I like this idea that I do think it was Madeline that attracted Werner in the first place. But I think it's one of those where I think even there's like Werner was attracted in by Madeline, but as things played out, she was more interested in Roderick because she's like, oh, like, she's stepped out of this. Like, I almost think there's a disappointment in Madeline from Werner. Like, you never, you were supposed to be my Cleopatra, but you never really truly achieved your potential. Like, Roderick overtook you, I think so. I think there's a bit of a disappointment from Werner.
I love that.
In what Madeline could have become, because I think she even says at one point, like, what you could have become or what you can become. And so there's like,
sorry, and there is that emotion to Werner. She gives each of the Usher children an out. They don't have to die in the horrific ways that they do.
Yeah,
and she constantly gives them an out. They could have died in their sleep and not known. And so there is emotion, there is compassion to her, which I think lends more to what you're saying than I was very much sort of like, I think this is just what she does, and there's like, she has no control over it. But actually, I think it lends more to what you're saying in terms of, is this just like a grand experiment for her to see whether humanity will rise from the ashes? Heads up, Werner, we don't. Yeah, we're screwed. We're making it all worse.
Yeah, the house that falls at the end is literally the world. Yeah, and we're done.
Just come for us all. I want to die in my sleep, though. That'd be lovely. Thanks.
But like you said, that's a really good point, because she does every single one of them. She gives the possibility of an out. Like, she meets Prospero on the bed, and she sort of, and he's like, "Oh, we'll do this later." The one she gives the most out to is Camille, where she literally says, "Why are you shouldn't be here." Like, she's almost like, you don't want this death. Yeah. Like, this is, and some of the others as well. Sort of like, she gives them that out. I think the only one she doesn't really is Froderick, where she's just like, "Now you're a complete prick. Like, you're getting what you get. You're getting what you're getting. Like, we're done."
But she gives them visual clues as well. With Leo, she's wearing the cat collar and a little bell. She's wearing a skull mask with Perry and stuff like that. So it's like, come on, you lot. I mean, obviously you deserve to die because you're all terrible, but she's literally telling you all both how she looks and what she's saying to you. Yeah. You don't have to do these terrible things. And they're like, I'm a terrible person. Yeah.
Go awfulness. Yeah, but I think that's the thing. Like, Werner is she's about choices. This whole thing is about choices.
Yeah.
Like, because again, like you could choose to be a good person. You can have all this power and you could choose to be a good person. They chose to come to power and gain their wealth through ligodone, this secretly addictive painkiller. And obviously this is leaning into the opioid problem in the States and other places. But like, yeah, there's the point that sort of Werner keeps making, especially to Madeline, is like, you could have done anything. Like, you chose that path. Like, this is all you. This is your legacy. And when sort of the bodies are falling, and that's what Roderick's seeing, like she says to him, that's your true legacy. You will for years stride upon a pile of bodies that you've left behind you. That's the point. So I don't think, like she doesn't particularly have an agenda, but she clearly is watching closely. Like she's almost like a people watcher. Like she sets things in motion and then lets them play out. But it's just it's time, isn't it? Like him getting ill, he's like, right, okay, now time to call the herd, kind of thing. And so she's going to kill him off in different ways. I don't know. I feel the funny thing about this is because there's a moment where that Pym has done an internet search, like he's done an algorithm that's gone through and looked for her face in all these other photos. A mixed bag of Photoshop, I will say.
But how do you think they like really had to get their lawyers involved and be like, if we do this, are we going to get in trouble?
Some more so than others, I think. Like dead people and dead presidents and all that kind of thing. I bet they're a bit like, oh, this happens in films, like no one's going to give a shit. But there were others that I was a bit like, okay, they've had to cover them.
Murdoch. I don't want to go up against him. Thanks.
Well,
they're like, no, he's clearly a terrible person. Let's Photoshop that together. I was like,
Trump's in there, clearly. Well, they suggest actually they indicate that in this at the end when he's talking to Pym that he's taken a deal. Like obviously that the Trump family, the Usher family, clear parallels. But even Pym's like, when's his time? There's only so much I can. There's only even so much I can take. He was very good. But that thing of her being the same face throughout history, choosing that. And I always have a kind of problem with this in films because it feels like a bit of a cop-out where, it's always the same face through history. But you can change into a freaking raven and she can do all this other stuff. Like, why does she always have to look the same? It feels a little bit too easy almost. Like, she's turned up in all these photos like throughout the 20th century. I was almost hoping for and we have this papyrus that we found. But that'd have been, I think, a push too far.
And also and this is just a really tiny nitpick. I was like, these are all really famous people, right?
Yeah.
Surely someone else before this has gone, hold on. These really famous people and these quite like I would presume famous shots, like publicity shots, like sometimes it's out with famous people, like paparazzi shots.
This woman keeps popping up
with this woman. Jesus Christ, especially the 90s and early 2000s, you couldn't stop getting photos of famous people in every single newspaper. I'm like, come on.
Yeah
Somebody else has put this together.
She'd have been there with Jada Pinkett Smith. Yeah. One of the things I thought about this, that's again, I would think is the weaker part. This is the one little part of the story that niggles me. Is exactly as you're saying. People. This wouldn't be the first time someone's gone, oh, some of these are archived photos. Like some of these are famous photos, and you're just like, hang on, someone should have noticed this. But the other thing is, we've said about this being playing out an experiment. So from 1980 to 2023, okay, they've had this 42-year experiment, okay, where they've done this, and this is what the House of Usher has become. Cool, fine. The ramifications on the wider world of that experiment are massive. And obviously they have a knock-on effect. There's always this knock-on effect. So what other things has she done where she's given options that have had like huge history changing? Because she talks about like, oh well, Roderick would have been a poet. I don't mean, we don't really know what Madeline would have been, but that's one thing that's dropped. But I'm going back and looking at these photos. He's saying, like, what would have Rupert Murdoch been, apart from maybe, I don't know. I'm definitely sure he'd have been a rapist, but he's going to be dead soon. I'm going to say this. And no one's going to sue 20th Century Geek. Don't be ridiculous.
I mean, she's clearly got her little Ravenclaws into Boris Johnson.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Genuinely, I was like, is Boris Johnson?
Maybe she was the nanny that carried throughout. That's what I think was.
Yes, nice.
But like it made me think, like, how much of human history has she changed?
Yeah.
Just not really caring because she's, as you say, indifferent, but just those choices that have been made have influenced human history. And that was sort of interesting to me. I was like, okay, well, how different could we have been then if she hadn't have intervened? Because she basically sort of like gives awful people the option to be even more awful.
And that's so interesting, isn't it? And I think Mike Flanagan once again is holding up a mirror to society of what we deem as important, because these are all awful people.
Yes.
And I feel like Mike Flanagan very much wears his politics on his sleeve, and he is not right wing. And so I find that really interesting, that there's not a single good person that there is a photo of her with, like, well, and I love what he's saying there about society and what we deem as how powerful people exist, and how as society we are going. I mean, we're not enabling these people. It's the 1%ers are enabling these people, and that's what's really interesting, and how those 1%ers keep it going, and how they keep society as it is and keep everybody
the status
down.
Quo.
That's it. Thank you. God, can you just come and translate me all the time? That'd be really helpful, because you've done that so much in this chat. And it's that tiny proportion of society, and so she doesn't care about anybody else.
No.
And I was like, clearly you've got a lot to say about these type of people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But like you said, it's that thing of like, it's, as a Raven, it's what interests her, and what's new, what's glittery, what's the potential to do these things. But I also think there's a point being made by Flanagan about, what they say, like, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like you're saying, there's nothing good have come from these people. Well, the potential was always there for them to have done good, but they chose not to. And I think that's the point he's making. Is like, human history is replete with shits being shits. that's the thing, And she basically gave them the opportunity, and lo and behold, they were awful. So I think that's the sort of thing for me. It's fascinating. Again, like, we live in a time, they sort of point out Trump, and you say about the Murdochs and stuff. But to me, I was watching this, and I'm thinking like the Trump family, the Kardashians, all these families that sort of like get elevated and treat people horrendously and just feel that they can get away with it. And you are like that 1%. And I'm like, that means there's 99% that should really be like baying at their gates to burn them down. But, we're all on painkillers and watching television and eating cake.
Yeah,
so.
Because we're manipulated by that 1%.
Yeah.
Because they have the power over all of us. And we've just, as we were talking about before this, there's been like some sort of mass delusion of the human race that this is the status quo and this is how it should be, and it shouldn't. And he's very much saying that. Maybe that's just my woke agenda reading that into this TV show.
Well, I think
that's one of the things I've taken away from it.
No, I agree. I think it's 100% there. I mean, I was talking to Tony just last week about They Live. We were talking about the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So I think this feeling has been around for decades, and vive la revolution. That's what I say. Burn it down. Start again. Anyway, we shall come to an end. I think this was.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it forever, otherwise, aren't we?
Yeah, this is, to me. Let's quickly. We haven't watched Midnight Club. We haven't watched that, but he has got his others. So what I want to do. We talked about the siblings, but the four. Let's just talk about the four. I think that we sort of consider. So you've got the Haunting of Hill House, the Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and the Fall of the House of Usher. Let's give them a quick 4 rundown from 4 down to 4 to 1. So let's give it yours first. I think we'll be the same.
Don't make me go first. Yeah. Okay. So 4 is clearly Bly Manor.
Yeah.
4's the worst, right? Isn't it? Oh, I don't know because I love Midnight Mass so much. But if I'm ranking them, it doesn't mean that I love one any less. It just means rewatchability. No, it doesn't mean that either. Oh, I don't like this.
It's really hard.
Midnight Mass, Usher, Hill House.
I think I agree.
Yeah.
But I may come back to this in like 3 weeks and be like, actually, no, Midnight Mass has jumped back to number 2. But at the moment, I think this is a strong follow-up to Hill House.
The problem with ranking them is not only are they all exceptional, maybe apart from Bly Manor, but I don't think we have TV like that. I think we have amazing TV at the moment. I'm not shitting on that at all because we are in the wealth of amazing TV shows that explore so many different things. And I love it. And I think we've got so many talented people making TV. Support TV writers, everyone, and actors and everybody else. But I don't think we have TV like this. I don't think we have shows that like the ones that Mike Flanagan are doing. And so although we are ranking his 4 particular shows, you know, for me, Midnight Mass is one of the best TV shows I've ever seen, and I could still spend the rest of my life talking about it if anybody wants to talk to me about it. But there was something about Hill House which had not, for me, been captured in TV or film before, and that's just why it's so highly rated for me personally. I know other people don't think it's that great, but for me, I was like,
no, to me, I think Hill House is premium, a premium TV show.
Yeah.
I think it's up there as one of the best things. It's one of the best serialized ghost stories ever.
And I think it's going to be one of those things that each generation will watch, and it will continue on, and it will not degrade in quality.
No, every year it's come out, because I quickly checked the thing. It has been in Netflix's top 10 in October every year since it came out.
That doesn't surprise me. It was really hard not to rewatch Hill House before watching this. The only reason I didn't is because you suddenly messaged and were like, holy shit,
gotta watch it.
House of Usher's coming out next week. And I was like, what?
It makes me think. So we'll finish on one thing, because I think we both agree this was fantastic, and I was so pleased it's been fantastic. And I'd love to meet and talk with Mike Flanagan. So God. If you're ever listening, Mike, give us a call.
I don't get like weird about celebrity or whatever, because I just don't really think it's a thing. But when I'm around talented people, which doesn't help, is I spend a lot of my time with the Femon ladies, and they're all incredibly talented, and I just feel completely overwhelmed by how amazing they are. I would have the exact same problem that I have when I'm talking about any of those ladies, where I'd just be like, I just want to hear you talk, and I can't say anything intelligent or that makes sense. No. And that would happen to me with Mike Flanagan. I'd be like, just talk, just say words at me, and I'm fine.
No, you're right, though. That's what I'd do. I'd be like, right, I've set 4 questions. I've pre-recorded them so I don't look like a tit when I say them to you. And then go. And I'm sure you'll just fill an hour's worth of time. You're right. It would be amazing. I do feel the same. There are people that you speak to and you just go like, this person is like way out of my creative sphere. You're just like, so yeah. It would be amazing. It would be amazing to hear him talk. One thing I've been thinking about, and I don't know if I'm going to drop this on you, but
oh God, okay.
No, because I thought about it. I was like, what next? Like, we've done Hill House and Shirley Jackson, Bly Manor and Henry James, which they are stories within their oeuvre, as it were. This is like the Poe show, like he's got the whole house, but crammed in so much more. And I'm like, who could he do next? Like, what could he do next? Like, is he now set the bar too high? Like with these things, like is what next? The only thing I can think of is like I was like, all right, I want him to do a Lovecraft kind of thing, but like I don't want him to go full Cthulhu. I don't want to see loads of elder beings. Like there are other stories. I want him to do like the lesser known Lovecraft stories. Like start with the Case of Charles Dexter Ward, which you've never read it. Great story about generational not so much generational, but like generations and dark and black magic and identity and monsters, of course. But I want to see him take on something like that. Would be really cool. But
see, you've talked there is something I'm interested in. So I was thinking about this, funny enough. So I'm prepared. Of themes I would like him to do. I couldn't think of particular writers, but themes, cults. So I'd love him to do the theme of cults, mostly because I'm obsessed with them. I'm not in one or want to have one or anything like that, but I find the idea of them absolutely fascinating. And Spider Dan and I next year are going to do an episode on it. Or magic, they're the things. Or there's a third one. You'll be interested. Witchcraft.
Yeah.
So
that would be good. Magic and witchcraft.
Yeah, they're the themes. I'd be very interested in him doing.
Yeah, I can imagine there's plenty of stuff to do in the old magic, like Aleister Crowley sort of covering off cults and stuff of the early 20th century, and maybe like the witch trials or something else, and modernizing it. Yeah. If you are going to look at cults, just saying this is obviously a different thing, but I'm sticking with Netflix movie called Apostle.
So I've not watched Apostle before, but I've heard so much about it, and it's one of those things where me and my other half are like, it's on our watch list, we'll get around to it, and then it's like a rare Saturday night where we've got it free, and it's like, do you know what? I don't want to watch that.
Yeah.
I think we'll just watch whatever terrible film is on Sky at 9 p.m.
It's fair enough. But Apostle is good. I do recommend Apostle. Right. Anyway, we'll start wrapping up. This has been amazing. We could just talk for hours and hours.
I know. Why do we keep on doing this to ourselves in the best way?
It's brilliant, isn't it? There'll be so much more to come. You will be back, I'm sure. It's been too long, but 20th Century Geek is now in full flow where we're doing stuff. But before I talk about what we're up to on the show, Ria, firstly, thank you so much for coming on talking about this, and more Mike Flanagan. Mike, more Flanagan, please.
Do it for us.
Yeah. We want to do a flagathon again. I don't know, a flagathon. That sounds awful. A full marathon of Flanagan. Sounds
like something Perry would do.
Yes. Yeah. But where can people find you, and where can people hear you?
Yes, so come and find me at Femon. I talked about it just now. So the Femon Collective, it's a female-led podcast. We all have our own shows. It's amazing. We talk about different things: film, TV, comics, activism, books. Alison does an amazing show where she'll talk about a scene from anything, and then we'll talk about it. Tonya is our activism person. I can't say what I was trying to say there. And her episodes will make you want to go and with your pitchforks and
burn the world down.
Burn the world down.
I'm pretty sure Tonya would be near me behind the hill over the 1%ers.
Ada will lull you in with her beautiful speaking voice and then share some radical poetry with you that will blow your mind. Jess will just make you want to read all of the books in the world that you don't have time to, so your pile or your wish list will just build it up and up and up. And I talk about film and TV and creativity. Most recent episode of Femme on Film is with our friend Tony Farina about the film Assassination Nation. If you want to listen to 90 minutes of two grown adults go, is this any good? I don't know. This is the podcast for you. Go and have a listen.
That's it. 90 minutes of indecision. That's what we always want.
It's great. So come and find us. Femon.show is the website. oh God, I can never remember their Instagram, which is terrible. But just look for like the Femme on Podcast Podcast Collective. We're around there, or me at Ria Carrigan.
Yeah, wonderful. And I completely, you guys do great work. It's some fascinating topics that makes me think about things, especially as I've got, I have a daughter, and I have to sort of keeps me in, in a certain mind frame at times as she gets older. So it's important. Anyway, where to find me? So obviously follow the more of the 20th Century Geek. We've got more stuff coming up. We've got Tony is back. We're carrying on our story time. We've done Death Race, and we've done what else we doing? We didn't. They Live. Recently, we talked about that, and we've got The Thing coming up to talk about, and we've got Rear Window, and so many other bits and pieces. Yeah, but me and Tony, where you guys were just doing Indecision, I will say that the They Live podcast is just me and him going, "This is brilliant" for 90 minutes. So it's less analysis and just sort of like more sort of geeking out. But there's great stuff, and obviously find the Patreon, www.patreon.com/20CG Media, and all the kinds of do Trekking Through the Twilight Zone, and me and Julian Darius doing other stuff on there from Stories Out of Time and Space. And coming in the future, keep an eye out for the future. So announcement soon. Julian and I have another project. We are looking at the whole back catalogue of Akira Kurosawa. And we're going from sort of his earliest films pre-World War II to his post-war career at the moment, and it's fascinating. I'm learning an awful lot about Japanese history. But anyway, for now, Ria, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. It's always a treat to talk to you, and you'll be back again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we'll talk again soon.